You know, when we're living what we're living, we don't know whether we're hypnotized or not. And there's a great Fleetwood Mac song called "Got Me Hypnotized," and there's some lines from that. Now you know it's a meaningless question to ask if those stories are right, because what matters most is the feeling you get when you're hypnotized. Seems like a dream, right? Seems like a dream. Is it real or is it not? It's all we know is this is what we're believing, and so I'm going to talk today about got me hypnotized. Do we have that little graphic up there? So the when you're hypnotized, that they use from the movies, you are getting sleepy, and so there's a lot of things in people on the stage. They go in and they like to hypnotize members of the audience and get them to do silly things. And so I was watching Zach Pinche, and he was at a college event. And you can see it on YouTube if you like. He's wonderful, and I laughed and laughed. So, but what he did was he hypnotized the whole audience, and and he said, and so he asked the people, and he gave them a suggestion that they wouldn't be able to remember their first name, and then asked them to introduce themselves to the people sitting next to them. And there was a whole audience full, and so the people that couldn't remember their name to introduce themselves, he had them come to the front. So there was about a dozen out of the audience, and um, and so and so he went through and he had them, forget their first name, act like they were a 5-year-old, and all the different things you would do in kindergarten, and it was a lot of good-natured fun. Um, but one of the things that really struck me was at the beginning of it all, before he hypnotized the whole audience, he said, "Now don't worry, if you don't want to be hypnotized, you won't be." So he gave the audience control over whether or not they got hypnotized. So this is also true for us when we're hypnotized by the world. We have a choice whether we're just going to buy into it, into that being what we're hypnotized about, or whether we want to look through that to the spiritual truth that's underneath. We have that power to decide. But how do we know that we're hypnotized? How do we break the spell? Do we want to break the spell? We might like that daydream that we're in the middle of. After all, if it feels so good, or maybe if it doesn't feel good, but at least it's familiar bad, right? And so we're in the middle of it. Now, from the Science of Mind New Thought perspective, what it means to be hypnotized is that we are part of the collective unconscious, we call it, or race consciousness. And so this is the dream that's centuries old of all the collective thoughts and experiences of humankind. And so we're born into that as if this is the truth. But it's not really the spiritual truth, the possibilities. It is the collective experience of what people have gone through. And so it's like a dream. Remember from the movie The Matrix, Neo. And in the end, he finally finds that all that he's been going through is just a pre-existing dream, right? That everyone was a collective agreement about life. And so how does Neo figure out what's real and what's not? It's really a big question. And so there's another song about this, and a great line by John Lennon from Strawberry Fields Forever. He says, "Living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see." Right? So when we're hypnotized, we don't necessarily see what's really true. We just see what we've been told to see. Right? Now he wrote this song because Strawberry Fields was an orphanage, big orphanage that they had. And so when they were recording one of their songs in a recording studio for about 45 days, it was right next door to the strawberry fields. And as a child, he had gone out with his friends, and they just had all of these wonderful, blissful times just doing whatever kids do, playing in this big, huge strawberry field. And in the summer days, and just accepting the world as it was, or as it appeared to be. And when you're a child, you don't really look underneath everything. You just accept the world the way it is, the way it appears to be. People don't even know that it's a dream. But we are called to wake up. Our entire life journey is to wake up. That the dream that we're living, it's built on separation. Belief that we're separate from God. We're separate from each other. We're separate from ourselves even. We're separate from the planet. We're so dependent on the planet on which we're living. But people ignore it, and we have climate change. And, I heard one pundit say that, or scientists say that we've got maybe 10 years before we might irrevocably go over that threshold where we can't control the climate, the increase in temperatures and so forth. So, but we're really all connected. We're all in it together. That's the spiritual truth. So I'm a part of you, and you're a part of me, right? Whatever we do, Jesus said, whatever you do unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done unto me. So whatever we do for someone else, we're doing really for part of ourselves, right? Now, how do we deal with this dream? Well, we try to control our lives. We go into, we decide what's right and what's wrong, and in judgment mode, right? So what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, us versus them, whoever them or the other is, fear, judging, all those kinds of things, just trying to make things make sense so we can be in control of our lives. And as we try to cope, these are seeds for things that we do to cope, like we're being very controlling. Or some people are going to go into blaming other people or feeling shame or guilt about whatever is going on. We split life into heaven and hell. But in Science of Mind, we talk about it being a state of mind. It's not a physical place that we go after death. It's a state of mind right here and right now. There's people that really get into that victim mode and feel that everybody's got it in for me. Or then there's the other thing is that maybe the universe is conspiring for our good. Maybe that's the truth. Which is it? So whatever it is, when we just keep working in this physical world and trying to change life out there, it's like moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. We're not really dealing with the underlying truth of what's really going on. Right? We're being asleep to what's real. As an example, I went on a sabbatical in June, and part of the reason I decided to do that is that life was getting just so hectic with all of the responsibilities that I have. I was working 55 hours a week, week after week after week, and just tired and exhausted, and I didn't have enough time to sleep. I didn't have time to take care of myself. I wasn't spending enough time in meditation. Sure, I'd have my little beginning meditation in the morning, but not the time to just sit and listen and be fully present. Every day I try to check off. I have this 2 long lists of to-do things, and I would just check them off. And at the end of the day, I got all these things done, but all these things that aren't done yet, they're just endless. They're endless. And so, or maybe my best ideas, it doesn't get enough support, or it doesn't happen, or just unexpected opposition. What's going to happen? This is a hypnotic state. We get in that survival mode, right? We get disconnected from spirit. We get disconnected from who we really are, because we are the infinite, invisible, expressing itself through us. It doesn't get any better than that. We're unlimited. And so when we think that we're trying to do this thing on the physical world, we're not taking the time to smell the roses. We convince ourselves that if we just try a little harder or try something different, there must be a secret way out of this maze if I can just figure it out. Or if I treat this person a little bit better, do a little bit more, then they'll love me and support me and want to be with me. Or maybe we despair and we think things will just never get done. I really got a laugh out of the Moonshine Inc. if you saw it this week, and the caption was "Trying to get across North Shore. How amusing!" And the picture says that here's one of the flaggers, and abandon all hope, right? We give up sometimes give up our power, and when we give up like that, and what's even scarier is when we are hypnotized by that dream state and our inner demons, so we don't even see those gifts of love and support and meaning that Spirit always has for us if we just take the time to stop and listen, right? You know, it's Mir Baba has a great quote. It's characteristic of the ego that it takes all that is unimportant as important and all that is important as unimportant, right? There was a story about Ram Dass tells in his book, The Journey of Awakening. And there was once a king who was going to put to death many people. But before doing so, he offered a challenge. You know, if any of them could come up with something that would make him happy when he was sad or sad when he was happy, he would spare their lives. Yeah, he was giving them a chance, right? But he was pretty angry. So all night, the wise men just meditated on the matter and meditated. They knew that there was an answer, and they listened. So in the morning, they brought the king a ring. And the king said, I don't see how this ring is going to make me happy when I'm sad or sad when I'm happy. The wise men pointed to the inscription, and they said, when the king read it, he was so delighted that he spared them all. And what did the inscription say? This too shall pass. Right? Whether it's good or bad, it's all form. It's all ephemeral. Form is always changing. It's the timeless that's underneath it all, that spiritual truth of who we are that is always there, expressing itself in greater ways every moment. So how do we awaken and discover what it is that's underneath? Well, the first step is to clearly see our circumstances. Our journey is to wake up, to actually experience reality. Motivational speaker Tony Robbins, he once was asked, is it hard to hypnotize people into a trance state? And he said, no. The difficulty is waking them up from a trance state they're already in. Right? You know, someone else said, you know, I've woken up over 10,000 times and I'm still not used to it. You know, we wake up every morning, but it's not just physically waking up. It's this inner waking up that we're looking for. Yeah, this is the powerful life, the transforming process of awakening. Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind textbook, he says, to practice the presence of God is to awaken within us the Christ consciousness. The oneness of knowing that Christ consciousness is within us, always ready for us to just recognize it and open up to it. You know, it's so much more comfortable to stay in our rightness than to step back and admit that our perception, you know, it may not be accurate. We don't like to be wrong, right? So there's a classic example of preferring to stay in our rightness rather than waking up is to label or judge everyone around us. And in our society today, there's a lot of people that are judging people that have awakened as woke, is the way they've called it. And woke actually began as a shortened version of awakened. And in the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, it says woke evolved as an African-American vernacular to mean aware of social and political issues, especially racism. Right? Well, that's a good thing from their perspective. But then some other people have turned that all around and made it a statement of disrespect. You know, it's used in a disapproving way. And so it doesn't change the fact that being awakened is part of being enlightened and what we're all striving for. But it allows them to stay in their judgment and judging the other, you know, defining someone else as the other, different from us. In Romans 13, it is said, the hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, and the day is almost here. Let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly as in the day. Right? And so being awakened is something that is a part of the teachings of Christianity. It's part of the teachings of Buddha and Hinduism, and it's a part of many religions around the world. And so this is a great thing to aspire to. And warm and fuzzy, it feels great, but what about those people and the circumstances that upset us? I mean, we just can't get over it. I mean, there's something wrong with these people. They just can't get it. They're not enlightened. They're in my way. They're in the way of the world. They are causing all of the world's problems, and mine too, right? And so, in Science of Mind, we talk about oneness, but it's not just an intellectual level that we can get there. It really has to come from the heart and from a transformation. And so I'm going to talk about, first I'm going to talk about how we can handle this intellectually, what the thinking process goes through, and then we're going to talk later about the internal shift, which is at the spiritual level. So thinking about it, one thing that unites all of us is that we all want the same thing, love, right? We may have very different ways of trying to get love, but it's what we all want. This is because the infinite presence of the divine is love, right? Another word for God is love. This is the truth of who we are, because we are made in the image and likeness of God, right? We are made in the image and likeness of love, each and every one of us. So, but that hypnotic trance of collective consciousness, it casts two spells on us, which distort our thinking. One is that we're separate from life, we're separate from love, from God, from our good. And second is that life is not safe. So when we have these beliefs clouding our thinking and our connection with spirit and with love, then people try to cope the best they can, and they get instruction from the collective consciousness. And so one way you do it, there's two basic ways. You try to control life, or you try to do it just right and be a perfectionist, right? And so, but of course, we can't control everything. The world's infinite, and we're just one person, and try as we might, it's like all those things of all those different plates spinning, right? You just finally get to the point where one more plate, the whole thing falls apart, right? There's only so much we can do as an individual. And the second part then is we're human, and when we don't get it just right, when we're not perfect, when we don't live up to that high standard that we want to set for ourselves, then we judge ourselves for not doing it right, for being wrong, we must be unlovable because we're not doing it right. We're all alone. We would never be worthy of that divine love that we're seeking, right? We get ourselves boxed in. And this is that trance state of feeling unworthy, of being hypnotized, that we're not part of the one. We're not good enough. In this state of mind, people do all kinds of crazy, desperate things. It's said that all actions are either an act of love or a call for love. Right? An act of love or a call for love. When you think through everything that the most horrible things that have ever been done are really calls for love. Misguided, perhaps, but they were calls for love. All healthy and dysfunctional behavior is built on this foundation. And so if then we can learn to suspend judging dysfunctional behaviors as wrong or evil, and instead see people as people just like ourselves who are doing the best they can with what they know. This is the only way that we can move from those silos of separation and judgment that are getting increasingly more reinforced in our world, and create safe spaces and experiences to transform our relationships. When we try to do something new, we're not usually very good at it. But with practice, we can get better. And when we've got two people that come from very different silos and try to be together. What a great undertaking. So this is how we transform the world. This is how we transform lives. And it starts with our own inner work. It's not about fixing them out there. It's about starting with us and us learning how to be half of that relationship. And the reading from Book of Awakening that Michael shared with us this morning The hardest work we have to do is within ourselves. We're looking at our underlying values, assumptions, and beliefs that keep us locked in those silos. And to question and change our beliefs, we must allow ourselves to feel vulnerable. We must let go of the things around us that we cling to for safety, even though they're not really true or they don't really serve us. We have to dare to quiet our ego and surrender to the infinite presence of divine love. And this is the task of awakening, which is perhaps the most important task of our life. Now, when we're practicing something and we're getting rid of these beliefs that are in our way, it's like peeling back the layers of the onion, right? So you peel back one layer and you find something underneath. So, I didn't realize this belief was also there too. And then you peel away that one. Oh, and there's another and another and another. So we finally get down to the heart of what is truth, a spiritual truth, as we cut through that hypnotic trance. And so we're healing and transforming our whole inner structure. What is true may look very different than what we had assumed is true. But we're surrendering to that higher possibility of who we could be. When I was on my sabbatical in June, every few days I seemed I had a new aha. I was having time, having fun with family and doing some fun things, but I was also taking time to just be and sit still and listen. And typically I would awaken in the morning with a new aha. I understand what's going on here. I always understand why this person did that, or I understand what I truly want to do. And then a few days later, I'd wake up with another aha that went a little deeper. But it was a path that I needed to go each step before, at the conscious level, I could understand what the answer was for me to discover. I was building a whole new foundation. What I had thought had been the structure of who I was, that wasn't really it. There was something deeper that is about who I am. And so the form was less important than really that deep connection, right? And our center is going through some changes, and it's really important to start with, who do we want to be? To listen to that, and to see what our mission in the world is, and to see maybe there's a different form that will allow us to be that even better. So we start with this intellectual knowledge that cracks open the shell, that silo that we've got around us. But how do we integrate this knowledge to that deeper level of knowing, to not just hoping that those spiritual principles of love and oneness are true, but really getting to know that we know that we know it is true with our whole being, right? So the spiritual teachers guide us towards two basic spiritual practices on the path to awakening. One is meditation, and the other is compassionate listening. So in meditation, when we still the mind, we quiet the monkey mind that keeps reminding us of the rules and opinions of that collective consciousness. Oh, that's not really true. This is what's always happened in the past. Well, maybe in the past, but maybe there's a better way. All right? So we have to open our mind and our heart to our true self speaking, to that spiritual self with a capital S speaking to us. And it's not an overnight process. Well, for some it might be. But for most of us, it's about taking that time to sit still. Maybe it's just a few minutes at the beginning when we started, and then it builds up over time. Or maybe we have this great spiritual practice and then something happens and we lose our faith and we have to go back because there's something that's come up, some landmine that we hit, and it's some deep belief. And so it's about practicing and letting go and listening to spirit, allowing us, or surrendering and allowing ourselves to be transformed. It's like as we take that time to practice, we get glimpses of what it could be. We get glimpses of that lighthouse, and we know it's there through the fog. And so as we practice, we get better at seeing that lighthouse all the time when we want to see it. Now, the other practice I want to talk about is compassionate listening. And this is where we learn to listen from curiosity, not our desire to be right. Listen from the heart, not from our firmly established point of view, which we're going to gladly share with the world to transform it. We listen with wonder and seeking first to understand rather than queuing up our next statement to win the argument or to prove this other person wrong. Compassionate listening opens up many pathways to truth. It's important in conversations with loved ones. It's important in conversations with ourselves, because that's the only way we can evolve, right? It's harder to forgive ourselves. It's harder to, we can watch someone else evolve. That's great. But when it's us having to give up what we've hung on to is our foundation, that's pretty scary. I'm not who I thought I was. That's an amazing transformation that happens. But we have to learn to be truthful to who we are. As we've, as the board has been talking about the things happening with our building and stuff, and I'm telling everyone, we need to each of us be true to what we're hearing within. Because whatever's the highest and best for us individually will be the highest and best for the whole center. And vice versa. What's highest and best for the center will also be the highest and best for us individually, however it passes. Because we're all part of the one, right? The right hand needs the left hand to come together and go apart, right? In A Course in Miracles, Lesson 5, it says, I am never upset for the reason I think. So sometimes when we get really bent out of shape over something that happens, I know this, Michael and I, this is important to remember in a love relationship. When we get really bent out of shape, it's probably not the lid off of the toothpaste or whatever happened. There's really something else that's festering underneath. And so that becomes an opportunity to listen, to create a safe space for that person to share and discover what they may have been totally unaware of because they were hypnotized, right? They were in a trance. Ram Dass suggests that the spiritual journey is individual, highly personal. It can't be organized or regulated. It isn't true that everyone should follow any one path. Listen to your own truth. And so we each follow our own truth to enlightenment, to awakening. In the Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo that Michael read this morning, it's a very dramatic depiction of how our transformation can be when we let go of our old ways and of being and surrender to what is new, to those greater possibilities. One of the line is, as a frightened man in a burning boat has only one way to the rest of his life, we must move with courage through the wall of flame into the greater sea. Right? I mean, imagine that, being in the middle of the ocean. You're on a burning boat. It's the only thing keeping you from drowning, you think. And your only way to survive is to jump off the boat through the flame? That's pretty scary. But that's what it's like to be enlightened. It's that dramatic a change, and sometimes, and this is the passage of rebirth that we have to move through. If we wait for those flames to die out, we might go down with the boat anyway, right? Or we might just wait forever. So it's about connecting with spirit and finding which way it is. And when we do, we're going to find that we're supported in ways that we had never imagined were possible, in ways we never even knew that we needed. And this is the beauty of transformation. This is, when we're in relationships with someone who's so different than us, but it is because we're part of the one. That is the possibility of transformation for our relationships one-on-one and all of these silos of others that we've created in the world. This is the path forward that we're called to. Otherwise, we're going to self-destruct, right? In that collective consciousness of anger and hate, when in fact we're all part of the one, and love is the truth of all of us. So as we become aware that we're hypnotized by that collective consciousness, that collective dream of humankind, we begin to see that our most important task in life is to wake up. Our way out of the trance is to take time to stop, go within and remember who we are, part of that infinite, invisible, expressing itself in, through, and as us in all circumstances. As our vision clears, we can see what's real and the timeless versus the physical world that's not real and always changing. Our misconceptions dissolve. And so when we take the time to meditate and we listen with compassion and align our vision with that true reality underlying our perceptions, we awaken from our trance and discover what we have been seeking, the infinite presence, which is life and love everlasting. We realize that we're not separate from this source. There is no other. The world shifts from us versus them to you are a part of me and I am a part of you. We are one in spirit. And so as we heal within, and as we turn away from our old ways of defending ourselves by attacking and blaming others, and we learn new ways of acting with love for ourselves, for those we love, and especially those that our ego has wanted to label as the other. This is the path forward of transformation and of love. It is the path to awakening. Let's take this to prayer. So as we go within, we let go of the world outside and all the things that are happening before service and after service and even right here in this moment. And as we go within, there is the presence, the infinite presence of God or Buddha or whatever we want to call the infinite invisible. And we know that it is love. And it welcomes us with arms wide open. It embraces us and holds us as its own. And we realize that it is always here within us. We realize that we are the arms and the hands and the voice and the feet, the expression of divine love in the world. We are the expression of peace, infinite peace, and whatever seems overwhelming as we let go, this infinite love fills us and flows through us to transform all situations. This is the truth of who I am and of each person here, of each person listening to my voice, of each person on this planet. And so, in this state of consciousness of oneness with all that is, of all that is good, let something come into your mind, into your consciousness that is an example of one of your ways of being, of thinking or loving that stands between you and the fullness of life. It might be small, it might be great, it might be a hidden secret, or maybe a critical blaming nature that you suffer, where you feel a victim or you have been victimizing someone else, judging someone else. Maybe it's fear of your own feelings, that you're not enough, or that this idea might not be good enough. And now, breathe deeply. Breathe deeply. And imagine what moving through this old way of being might be like. Imagine yourself floating on the sea of spirit. And as this boat is around you, this old way of being, perhaps it is in flames. It is not the truth of who you are. If you're going to move beyond it, what would it require you to release? What new ways of being are you called to embrace? It might be as simple as giving yourself permission to be spontaneous, or permission to break your old routines, or letting go of familiar activities and places to to make room for new life, new ways of being. And as you look through the flame, you see this sea of spirit, and it beckons to you, saying that you are a part of me. I support you. Come forward. Let go. And so imagine yourself moving through that flame and immersing yourself in that sea of spirit surrounding you. Quickly, the flames are doused. A stronger and more loving you is revealed from within, and you are supported perfectly in every way. This is where you belong. This is who you have always been. This is the greater possibility. And around you, see the other people that are daring to make this leap into the sea of spirit. You are there together, loving and supporting each other, lifting each other up. But more importantly, being lifted by that infinite love and peace and wisdom that is unchanging, that is always there, always supporting us from within and from without. Know that you now are happy, you are loved, you are free to be yourself. That unique, wonderful being that is a part of spirit, a unique and cherished part of spirit. And it feels so good. As we release this selves from the trance, we surrender and allow ourselves to awaken, to be awakened by grace, to be awakened by love. And it is with deep gratitude that we release these words, release this experience into the law, which always says yes, which says, yes, my beloved, yes. And there is even greater things to come. It is all God, and it is all good. And we say, thank you, Father, Mother, God. And together we say, and so it is.